Groundbreaking study shows differences from pandemic for LGBTQ plus versus the straight community. We knew this was coming. A new study by the Williams Institute by UCLA finds older LGBTQ plus Americans were affected more negatively by the COVID-19 pandemic than their straight peers. Using data from the U.S. Census Household Pulse Survey, the report examined the demographics, health, and economic experiences of LGBTQ plus adults aged 50 to 64 and those aged 65 and older during the COVID-19 pandemic. That survey data included questions about sexual orientation and gender identity for the first time, granting researchers an unprecedented trove of information about LGBTQ plus Americans. The survey considered different ethnic groups relying on credit cards or loans or savings or retirement to supplement their incomes during the pandemic. More white LGBTQ plus people reported using the same income sources they used before the pandemic to meet their spending needs. More Black, Hispanic, and multiracial LGBTQ plus people reported relying on borrowed money from friends and family, and more Hispanic, Asian, and multiracial LGBTQ plus people reported depending on stimulus payments compared to white LGBTQ plus people. The survey also compares the percentage of straight and LGBTQ plus adults 50 and older who received a COVID-19 vaccine. In both age cohorts, almost all LGBTQ plus people had received the COVID-19 vaccine, more than their straight peers. But among those who tested positive or had been diagnosed with COVID-19, the proportions were similar. Well, interesting. Quick summary of the report, which I think is a common sense result that we suspected. We spent the better part of 2 years at Queer News Tonight reporting on COVID every single night. We had an anchor that died of COVID. We say his name, Ron Bernensky. Josie really made headlines because she was one of the first people that we knew that got COVID-19 and continued to test positive for like 40 some days.
65
plus days continued to test positive in the very early. We're talking about April, I believe, March, April of 2020. What we learned from this is if you were white LGBT, you did okay in COVID when everything came to a stop compared to our peers in LGBT of Black, Hispanic, and other communities besides white. And that in general, LGBT had much more difficult time than our straight counterparts, even in white, and had to use more resources of savings, other kinds of revenue generation, family support, and stimulus money than straight counterparts. Those are the two big issues that the Williams Institute finds. And then the other thing, which we also knew, is LGBT had no issue with science. We believe science. And so therefore we got the COVID-19 vaccine far dramatic. Some estimates early on in vaccination was approximately 20 points more than our straight peers. That's
do you think that the response to the vaccine is possibly related to the community's history of HIV and what we've learned from that, what we saw? I mean, if there had been an HIV vaccine early on, obviously people would have gone for that. But I mean, do you think that has anything to do with why?
It's a logical conclusion. The Williams study doesn't come to that conclusion, doesn't comment on that, but that's a logical assumption.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of different factors that play into this study, and again, it's not sharing how they got to their, how they received or accumulated that data, but there's a lot of factors, I mean, is it a surprise to us that the brown communities, when trouble is present, when something like this, there's a breakdown in even our governmental structure, that
our entire society, that brown and Black people are going to be the first ones to feel it, right. And we know that it's an ongoing conversation. I think we're moving in the right direction, but
that's again another example. And when we think about how, again, our community, brown and black, are resourceful people. So it's like throw a pandemic at us. We'll work it out. We're gonna figure it out. We'll see you on the other side. Enjoy your comfort, And also when you think about it too, in white families, I don't know who exactly they were interviewing, but that could be like a 2-parent unit, a 2-person household, and a lot of the LGBTQ is single, and probably went single through this process. And a matter of fact, I think I adopted a lot of my single friends during the pandemic. So if I remember correctly.
I was just thinking in this story, remembering coming to your house every day for weeks and weeks, because completely confined, living with Marcy, your wife, and your mother, and being completely isolated, and we're bringing you desserts, a plate of pastries every day. It was an incredible time. And I remind you, we're going to start to see the pictures of this. This is going to be the first year where we really are in while COVID exists, a relatively COVID-free society, but we're going to start to see all of our pictures because next month is when it really hits us of COVID 3 years ago, February of 2020. I was just saying to somebody today when this story came up, and I said, we're going to do this story about how LGBT was affected by COVID. And they reminded me, it affected everybody the same, because do you remember Commercial or US 1 when there were no cars on it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah.
We have been through a
town.
crisis. We really have been through a crisis.
And it's a different world.
And it's a different
We live
world.
today in a very different world.
Yeah. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.